Saxon's Trig, lesson 122, graphs of rational functions, and then graphs that contain holes. So we've been doing a lot with our graphs and talking about what the equations look like. If the highest exponent is a 3, you can have up to 2 curves. If it's positive, it's overall climbing. All of those rules that we've talked about. Now they're graphing the rational functions and giving you another piece of information. So if you have a fraction, whatever the x values in your numerator are creating the dots on the x-axis. Whatever you would have that creates, or whatever solves for the x here, creates an asymptote. And that means those dashed lines that you can't cross. So that's the new piece of information. And they call those the poles of the function. So the asymptotes or poles is the terminology that they're using. All right, I'm gonna skip over their explanations and jump to example 1. So they give us, and I'll just fill it in here, x with x minus 7 and, long one, x plus 5, x plus 2, x minus 2, there's another one, I ran out of room, x minus 5, cram it down here. All right, so I know that in my graph, I should get dots at x is 0, and I should get dots at 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, dot here. Then my asymptotes or poles at negative 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Because if this gives me a 0 in the denominator, I can't divide by a 0. That's why it's problematic. So dashed line at the negative 5, dashed line at the negative 2, dashed line at positive 2, and dashed line at positive 5. Okay, so I know I have a starting place here, and these are all going to curve around to either forming parabolas or curvy lines. Those kind of shapes are what we're going to have in here. Now, I want to kind of look at how many exponents do I have. Let's see, this one has 2, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 over 4 I'm not finding that super helpful. However, this one, let's see, are they all positive? Why are they showing me a negative x squared? I'm not seeing why they are listing that x squared in the numerator as a negative, so I'm ignoring that part of it. Sometimes I find their explanations is helpful and sometimes I don't. I do see very clearly that x squared is in the top and x to the 4th is in the bottom. And then if I wanted to figure out, there's no negatives with this coefficients that I'm seeing, which tells me that I feel like the whole overall graph should be climbing, but I can't guarantee it when I have the fractions. I just don't feel as confident. So what I would do at this point, even though it's a lot more work, is I would plug in values below 6. So I would plug in negative 7, negative 8, and figure out what the graph is doing here. I would plug in negative 3 and negative 4 to see what the graph is doing here. This one, because I've graphed enough without plugging in the negative 1 and the 1, I can pretty much guess that if I'm right and that it's climbing, it's going to do this number and the asymptotes are going to skew it. This one has the dot here, and I know that I didn't have a squared, which is going to force me to bounce it, so I'm going to go through it here in some way. But again, I hate to guess. So I would plug in this number and see what it gives me as a dot, and then I would have enough information to graph it. they're trying to go through an explanation as to why they jumped to their graph. And I feel like they actually did the dots and not just their paragraph of information. So assuming that you take the time to plug in -6, it appears in the graph that it gives a negative answer of some sort, so it's landing down here. And then I would know that this is skewing toward the asymptote line. Then my question is, can I pass the x-axis or am I bounded by the x-axis? So I would plug in -7 and discover that it's still a negative answer. And knowing that would tell me it's very tight, so it's going to skew at the x-axis. Then I would plug in and I would discover dots here that are like here and here. They're almost mirror images of each other. So that tells me that I'm either doing a parabola this way or this way. And since my answers were positive overall, I'm pretty sure that this is, oh, I should move my vertex down just a little bit more. So I could, if I wanted to be uber precise, plug in the 0.5 in between and get the actual vertex point. But because these mirrored, I'm pretty sure I have a parabola. And then this one, I'd already made a pretty good guess for it. And then when I plug in here, I get negative answers. And again, they're mirror imaging, and so it's down, so it's going to do something along that line. And then this one, if I plug in here, I realize that I get a kind of tight answer here. But if I plug in the next number here, I discover that I'm really tight into the negatives. So I can guess that this is going to go up toward the asymptote. And this is probably, and this gets a little weird because it's really tight to the 0. It's almost a flat line that it's doing here, but they put a bubble in it just to kind of show you it does dip down a little bit in there, but then it evens back up, or it's just like really tightish, something along that line. Now, part B, graphs that contain holes. If we have, I'm just going to go to example 2, -x² minus 5x minus 6 over the x plus 2. I have no idea what my values are for x up here unless I factor this. And so we're going to pull a -1 out because I don't want to factor with an x² that's negative, making that positive 5x and positive 6. And then that can split into x and x. 6 could either be 6 and 1 or 2 and 3. I'm gonna assume 2 and 3. So 3 is the larger number, middle number is positive. How do I go from 3 to 5? I add 2 more. Positive times positive is positive. Perfect. And all of this was still over top of the x plus 2. Now, in essence then, what I see is I want to go, oh great, let's make this smaller and kill off the x plus 2's. I don't want to do that because it loses pieces of the information. So what this tells me is if I have the same number that should be creating a dot and an asymptote, it's going to shift gears and create a hole instead in the graph. So I have -3, oh, spacing is terrible there, has a dot, and -2, wherever this -2 would be, I'm going to put a hole. So I need to figure out what the rest of this graph is doing. I would just plug in points to figure it out. So I would choose 0 because that's easy. So that would give me 0, 0, -6 over 2, which is -3. So 0, -3 would graph, and that tells me I've got a line happening here. But wherever this -2 was, I have to draw a hole in it, and technically the line wouldn't be there. So there's like creating a little gap in there. Example 3 gives us y equals x plus 5, x minus 3, x minus 1, x minus, oh, I already did a parenthesis there, x minus 4, x plus 2, x plus 4, and x minus 1. So do I have any place that is the same in both the top and the bottom? Yes, the x minus 1s. So at 1, I know I'm going to have a hole or a gap. Any others? No. Okay, so where will I have dots? -5, numerator first number, +3 here, and then I'm not going to do anything with that 1 because I know that it's creating a hole. Then asymptote lines at 4 and at -2 and at -4, and then I can't do anything with the 1. So again, I'm going to have to plug in numbers to this equation and see what kind of answers they spit out. So when I plug in -6, I discover it's a really tight number here. So that tells me I'm probably evening out to the x-axis and the asymptote skews me up. Probably a parabola looking shape in here. So I plug in the -3 and it gives me a negative, and that means I'm going to do a negative looking parabola, and then I would plug in 0, and 0 gives me something about in here, and I already had a dot in here. So now I feel fairly confident that this is going to like bounce over here and go up to the asymptote, and then this is going to really tight quick down. So that's more a curvy line. And then I need to plug in something over here to figure out what's happening. And so when I do that, I get it's a positive number. All right, so now I feel confident that the asymptote and the x-axis is going to skew me, but I probably do another number to test it just to make sure I don't go down into the negatives. But I feel confident because if I did, I'd cross the x-axis again and I would have had that in the answer. So that's why I feel fairly confident without testing another number that I've got a curve here. I failed to put my 1 with my hole in here. So where 1 was, this creates a hole as my final fix in the whole picture.